A few years ago, I lived alone in a small apartment complex on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. Just one of those buildings where everyone mostly keeps to themselves. I worked evening shifts at the time, which meant I usually got home around midnight. The apartment complex had a security guard who drove around the property at night. I didn't know him very well. We'd wave occasionally, that was about it. One Tuesday night, I got home around 12:30 a.m. Everything seemed normal. I made some food, watched YouTube for a while, and eventually went to bed. At exactly 2:47 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed the apartment complex office. I answered immediately because I assumed something had happened. The voice on the other end belonged to the security guard. He sounded confused, almost nervous. The first thing he said was,
"Hey, are you home right now?"
I told him yes. He was quiet for a few seconds. Then he asked me something that instantly made me sit upright in bed.
"Then who was standing in your living room 10 minutes ago?"
For a second, I honestly thought he was joking. But his voice didn't sound like someone making a joke. He explained that he had been driving past the building when he noticed movement through my apartment window. A person, standing completely still, just staring outside. He assumed it was me. But when he drove past again a few minutes later, the person was still standing in exactly the same spot, not moving, not walking around, just standing there, watching. That's when he decided to call me. I remember looking toward my bedroom door. My living room was on the other side of that wall. Suddenly, the apartment felt much bigger than it usually did, and much quieter. I turned on every light in the apartment, every single one. The security guard stayed on the phone while I checked each room. Kitchen, bathroom, closets, under the bed. Nothing. The apartment was empty. Eventually, we both agreed that he must have seen something else. Maybe a reflection, maybe a shadow, maybe someone in a neighboring apartment. The explanation made sense, at least for a while. Then strange things started happening, small things. The kind of things you can almost convince yourself aren't real. One morning I woke up and found my bathroom door open. I always slept with it closed, always. Another time I found a kitchen cabinet open. Then a week later, I came home from work and discovered a dining chair pulled away from the table, not by much. Just enough to notice. Every time it happened, I blamed myself. Until the photographs started appearing. The first one was lying on my kitchen counter. It showed the parking lot outside my apartment. Nothing unusual. Just a picture of cars. The second photograph appeared 3 days later. This one showed the hallway outside my front door. Again, nothing unusual. But it bothered me because I had never taken those pictures and nobody else should have been inside my apartment. I threw them away. The next morning, they were back on the counter. At that point, I installed a camera. I didn't tell anyone, not even friends. I placed it on a bookshelf facing the living room. Then I went to work. Halfway through my shift, I got a motion notification. I opened the app, expecting a false alarm. Instead, I saw someone, a figure standing near the window. The exact same spot the security guard had described weeks earlier. The image quality wasn't great. The room was dark. But there was definitely someone there. I left work immediately. The drive home felt endless. When I arrived, the apartment was locked. No signs of forced entry, no broken windows, nothing. Inside, everything looked normal. until I reviewed the camera footage. The figure hadn't entered through the front door. It hadn't climbed through a window. It simply appeared. One frame was empty. The next frame wasn't. The person was just there, standing by the window, motionless, watching outside. The footage continued for nearly 20 minutes. Then the figure slowly turned toward the camera, and before the video cut off, it smiled. I barely slept that night. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. Another notification. Motion detected. Living room. I opened the camera feed. The room was empty. At least that's what I thought. Then I noticed something. The camera wasn't facing the living room anymore. Someone had moved it. Very slightly. Just enough to change the angle. Now it was pointed directly toward my bedroom hallway. My stomach dropped. Because I had checked the camera before going to bed. And I knew exactly where it had been facing. Then movement appeared at the end of the hallway. A shadow, slowly crossing the frame. I sat frozen in bed watching the live feed. The shadow stopped. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then a hand appeared, wrapping around the corner, followed by part of a face, pale, smiling, looking directly into the camera. And then